So welcome, my name is Renee Area. I am founder, host, and producer with Little Humans by Mindvalley. And this, the inception of Little Humans was really, and Eric, this is why I love that you're here, because you are actually a true part of the inception story of Little Humans, literally completely woven into the fabric of Little Humans. And here's why, you guys. My pregnancy was, they say, later in life. For me, I think it was perfect time in life, but let's just say biologically, scientifically speaking, a lot of people want to label women in their 40s as a later in life pregnancy. My husband and I had a natural and surprise pregnancy when I was 43. And when I was only, I believe, 2 months pregnant, it was very, very early in my pregnancy, I had the opportunity to actually go through Lifebook. And many of you here from Mindvalley know about Lifebook, John and Missy Butcher's incredible personal development program. And Eric and his wife were a part of this Lifebook group when I was only newly pregnant. And so I got to connect with them as parents and see their interaction with their daughter, which I am telling you, you guys, and this is why we wanted Eric to come on in the first place. I was so captivated by the way that Eric and his wife were interacting with their daughter. Truly, I had actually never even seen that sort of relationship, you know, from the beginning of life, because your daughter at the time was quite pre-verbal. She was, what was she, 2, 1.5? She was young.
18 months.
Okay, she was very young. And imagine this, everyone. Eric and his wife were treating her like a person.
Like a little human.
Yes. And my heart was so touched to see the way that they were interacting. And really, truly, Eric, that gave me this feeling of, oh, okay, this parenting journey, this can really be sacred for us. And it was right about around that time that Akira and I started seeking out, you know, all the experts and kind of the personal development help. And that's when we decided that we wanted to create eventually a company where we could bridge personal development with parenting. So here we are. We did a launch last month for a product for the Little Humans collection, of which Eric was a part of. And now all of us are here to share wisdom with you for free during this time when we very much most need it. So Eric, I'm going to talk a little bit more about my personal relationship with you in a second. But for those of you who don't know, I'm going to read a little bit about Eric's bio. Eric, you are an author, serial entrepreneur, international business speaker, and the founder of Wild Fit. Wild Fit is a food philosophy that blends nutritional science and behavioral change principles. Wild Fit has helped thousands of people permanently shift their relationship with food and achieve what he calls food freedom. I have a personal, somewhat personal testimony to go with this. Our admin, Kaya, who was on the call right when Eric jumped on, wanted to share with him that her personal life has been transformed by Wild Fit. It was only after going through Wild Fit that she was able to ditch her caffeine habit. So Eric, just so you know, you do already know this, you are literally affecting tens of thousands of lives everywhere with their nutrition. And I also love this about Eric, super rare, I believe. You have 2 kids. One of them is, well, how old's your daughter now? She's not 2.
She's 3.5.
3.5. And your other son now must be 23.
22.
Talk about the wide spectrum of learning that we can get from Eric there. And also, you have spent a great deal of time with nomadic hunter-gatherers and made fascinating observations about the evolution of diet and specifically how that ties to parenting. And Eric doesn't consider himself to be a parenting expert, but instead a curious father. And
yeah, if ever I have any doubt of that, all I have to do is pretend I'm a parenting expert and my son will point out very quickly that it's not true.
Antonella, thank you so much. Same here. Wild Fit changed my life. I love it. So start dropping your questions into the Q&A box, you guys. Eric, I have some questions, lined out here, but you are so wise And as you were stating right at the beginning of this call, you have an opportunity, probably now even more than ever, to be in your genius zone of being able to support people from the ground up, with your wisdom. And because I know that you've been out there a lot, particularly over the last couple of weeks, really communicating with the people, I would just love to know from you, what are some of the pain points that you've been feeling, particularly with parents and particularly with health and nutrition during these quarantine times?
So first it kind of starts with my own journey. And that was that when all this happened, I think I realized the severity of it a little bit earlier than some of the people around me. And so what that made me was hysterical. They felt I was hysterical, right? And then it took them some time to catch up with that. And so as a consequence, my wife and our family friend that lives with us and looks after Zoe were on a cruise ship, which I probably wouldn't have gone for, but there was not much I could do without being, without like trying to lay down the law, which is just not how I am. That's how it was. And of course, when the cruise came to an end, they were very lucky to make it into the port of Miami. This is about 4 weeks ago. But we were very nervous at that point about trying to have them fly home and maybe get stopped, or me trying to get to the US and maybe get stopped. And, Zoe is on one passport and with me, and Elise is on her other passport from Britain, and we could have gotten separated. Like, it was a scary time. And so in the end, we made the decision that they should stay in the US with some very good friends of ours who have a beautiful house and a swimming pool and kids. And Zoe's very, we really thought a lot about, ultimately my goal for every child is that when somebody asks them 5-10 years from now, hey, do you remember the lockdown? They're going, yeah, that really cool time when we stayed home from school for a few months. Like, that's all I want them to think about. I don't want them to think about fear. I don't want them to think about money. I don't want them to think about viruses. And so, we took care of all that, but in the meantime, it left me home alone. And that gave me a lot of time to, introspective time. And I started reaching out to our clients, and I started reaching out to our fans around the world through Instagram and finding out what was going on out there. And I was horrified. And it really made me grateful for my fortunate financial situation, for the gorgeous house that I'm in, for the fresh food that's growing on the trees around me. I mean, I think about the people that are in every situation, from having lost their job to lost their business to being in a house with an abusive partner. I mean, there's every range of the spectrum. And I suddenly started thinking about kids. And so what I've been bumping into is everything from, I didn't choose to homeschool my children, so I don't know what I'm doing, to I don't know what to feed them because all they want is junk food, to I'm yelling at my children because I just lost my temper and I yelled at them and I feel guilty about that. To how about this one? Really tough one for me was a very good friend of mine in San Francisco has the father, her baby daddy. They were never in a relationship. They were a fling, and they ended up with pregnancy, and now they have to share the custody of their child, and they've had to go to court to get that custody sorted out. But he's a first responder, and he insists on having his visitation rights with the child, despite the fact that he's working on the front lines with this virus. Yeah. So I've seen a spectrum of really difficult parenting things. And that's why I'm super glad to be part of Little Humans and getting out there. In fact, on our Thrive Time show on YouTube, we've had Dr. Shefali, Shelley Lefko, who I know have also been in Little Humans, and Amber Trueblood, trying to answer those questions for people as best we can.
Yeah, thank you so much. And all the things that you brought up, those are the reasons why we all need to band together with each other today, and even start to create a group mastermind, if you will, here in the chat box. Because as you're saying, Eric, I think Akira and I were also really early adopters. We just kind of knew where things were moving towards. So we self-isolated, I think, about 2 weeks early here in California, and just trying to make sure that we had all the food, and everything in the house, because we didn't know, when we would be able to get back out again. Toilet paper, we still haven't been able to find. But you know what? If you just use little amounts, because let's all be honest here, before all of this, we weren't really paying attention to how much we were using. I'm telling you, like, we are making it last a lot longer. But Eric, I think every week throughout this quarantine, there are different new priorities, if you will, that are arising. And one of the things that has come up for me, I feel like, my husband and I have been very, very healthy, with our diet and with our food choices. And, for me, a lot of that comes from my past and the things that I've had to go through to heal my own self, through a massive surgery and through some chronic health issues. So for me, that's just an absolutely non-negotiable. However, I truly believe, had I not been raised on Lucky Charms and McDonald's and sleeping with a cordless phone underneath my pillow every night when I was a teenager, and microwave food and Pepsi Cola in the Midwest from age 0, not being breastfed, all the way through being 20, I like to think that maybe I wouldn't have to work as hard and diligent now, as a 40-something-year-old woman. So, I want to kind of dive into, there's been everything from, I really can't get my hands on as many vegetables, people who aren't growing food in their yard, obviously, which I think is probably a very, very small percentage of people on this call. And our hope is that one day we will all have gardens. I mean, how amazing would that be? But if you don't, what if you're having a hard time getting your hands on actually like fresh produce? What do you do? Or what do you do if you all of a sudden realize, oh my gosh, my family and I are all in these close quarters at home, and I'm realizing that we don't even have any health habits at all that are in place. Can you just kind of walk us through some of the things that people can do right now?
I think one of the things is that in most cases, most of the grocery stores around the world actually sold out of the kind of stuff you don't want to buy anyway. They sold out of frozen pizza, ice cream, chocolate, candy, alcohol. That's what they sold out of. And if you walked into the into the produce section, very often there were still tons of produce around. And one of the reasons that people did that is that when they're in emotional states, they tend to go for emotion-based foods. And then the other issue is that they feel like that stuff won't last, and they're panicking. And so they buy canned things and processed things that they know will last. And so, there are a few things that are driving that. I think one of the issues to really understand here is your health is absolutely your last line of defense. And I've been saying that since I released a video 5 weeks ago, that, ultimately you need to be taking care of your health if you want to protect yourself against COVID-19. But I'll put it another way. And that is really important. And that is, and this is maybe an unpopular position, and maybe it'll be a little controversial, but I'm gonna say it anyway. It is my belief that COVID-19 is not a super strong superbug. It is a wimpy ass, ridiculous little virus that only is dangerous in a population full of an epidemic of food problems. If we did not have prolific diabetes and obesity, hypertension, and autoimmune disease, we wouldn't even know what COVID was. You'd still think Corona was a beer. And I think that when we think about that, when we recognize that, one of the science advisors to the Health Ministry of Italy did an analysis of 1,000 of the first people to die, and 88% of them who had a cause of death, COVID-19, he determined that COVID-19 was at best what pushed them over the cliff. That they were dying of other things anyway, and COVID-19 was just the final straw. And had they not had the other pre-existing, think of it this way. Me in a car with a friend of mine who's hypertensive, massively overweight, diabetic, et cetera, et cetera. By the way, I want to be clear. That's not his fault. And I'll address that in a minute. It's not his fault. But the fact is he's in that situation, and we end up in a car accident with the same injuries. He dies in a car accident. But what he really potentially died of was all the lifestyle stuff that happened before that. And that's where I want to just say this. I use that phrase lifestyle, but I hate it. Because I strongly have come to the conclusion that calling it a lifestyle disease is simply the food industry and the government trying to shift the blame onto the consumer for their disastrous food manufacturing policies, their disastrous government regulations, and for all of the lobbying and manipulation that we've faced. They call it a lifestyle disease to blame you. Anybody who is overweight, hypertensive, dealing with diabetes, obesity, any of that stuff, it is not their fault. But unfortunately, it is their responsibility to turn it around.
Oh my God, not your fault, but your responsibility. Why? So Eric, when you say not your fault, I want to laser in on that. Is that, do you believe because of all of the additives and all of the fillers and kind of all of the dangerous components that are injected into our foods, or is it from miseducation? What is the root cause?
Yes. It's yes to all of it. I mean, look, the truth is where we went wrong is 30,000 years ago, two early humans were walking along and they noticed that plants were growing where they threw the seeds from last season in the camp. And they're like, oh my God, Do you think we can control this? Do you think we could actually grow food and not be dependent on Mother Nature? And that's the birth of agriculture. But the problem is in that moment, what do you think they chose to grow? The bitterest stuff or the sweetest stuff? So they, even in that moment, began changing food production toward their tongue and not their nutritional requirements, toward their taste buds. Your taste, incidentally, evolved to make sure that you went and got things that were very rare in nature, like sugar, very rare, got to go get it. Salt, very rare, got to go get it. So fat, very rare, got to go get it. So we're heavily motivated to get those things. But then when we started to be able to control food production, we started to be able to create a situation where we could get that stuff readily and we could serve our tongue instead of our nutritional needs. So when I say it's not your fault, it's our ancestors' fault. And then the food industry got involved. And look, I'm a capitalist at heart, but I recognize capitalism has some really serious weaknesses. And one of them is this: food manufacturers are now taking their profits to figure out through advanced biochemical and psychological ways of how to make us addicted to their food, including reducing the nutritional capacity of the food or the nutritional value of the food, including putting addictive substances in the food, and using manipulative advertising campaigns to remove choice. The food industry is constantly trying to get you to remove, they're trying to remove your choice about food so that you eat unconsciously and simply buy what they feed you. And then they make even more profits. And then what they start doing with those profits is hiring lobbyists to go and affect government regulations and education programs. So children are growing up today, and many times I've seen this, like on the late night shows where they walk the streets of New York and ask kids, what is this? And they show them an orange. They're like, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Yeah. And that's because we have a disastrous food manufacturing, food marketing, food regulation, food legislation system that's unfortunately driven by profits and not by quality of life and not by health. And there's the joke. The real joke of it is that the entire problem we're having around funding healthcare is created by the first problem. Diabetes is currently costing the United States $300 billion a year, while the sugar industry is making that money.
This is a big thing to unravel.
It is.
I mean, it is huge. You know, I wonder your opinion on this, because I think in general, you know, we all know to some degree that the quarantine in this form anyways is going to be temporary. And I also think that we all know that we're not necessarily going back to life as it was before. So I wonder, Eric, while we all have this time at home, I've kind of been seeing, and this is, I think, typical when there is anything major that is going on, socioeconomic, you know, globally, socially, but I'm seeing a lot of extremes. I'm kind of seeing people in the camp of, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm doing what I need to do to get through the day today. And if my kid, you know, if he's gonna entertain himself and not bother me and just eat, you know, more candy bars than usual, and, you know, we're gonna be on like the microwave meals, you know, for a couple months, that's fine, because like we just need to get through it. Then I have seen the opposite end of the spectrum of people really tuning in and saying, oh, family meetings. We're going to start having family meetings. We're going to start involving everyone in this conversation of how can we use this right now as an opportunity to maybe not, you know, make an excuse, but to make an upgrade. So I just wonder, because I understand and I have empathy and connection, I guess, with both sides of the spectrum. Where do you fall within that spectrum, and where do you advise people to be?
You know, it definitely is a difficult time. And frankly, I don't really have even the right to comment because I'm locked away from my children. So anything that I would say is theoretical at best.
Yeah.
But what I would say is that first thing is my mission as a parent and as somebody out there sharing my mission, my message with the world is that our goal as parents should be that our children remember this time as that cool time when school closed down, just like a major snowstorm. That's it. We don't want them. Look, children that grew up in the Great Depression, many of them ended up being messed up about money for the rest of their lives because of things their parents said. Okay, because of the meanings they created about the things their parents said. But the fact is that we're in a place now where if you talk about this virus and you talk about it all the time and you create a lot of fear in your house, then you're very likely going to create some kids that are germophobic, and that's going to affect the rest of their lives. If during this time you find yourself stressed economically and you start using bad economic language, like money doesn't go on trees, and you start saying we can't afford it rather than we choose not to buy it at this moment, then the children are going to grow up with dysfunctional money beliefs. So I think one of the things that we really need to be paying attention to is, what are our children going to deduce as a result of what we say and what we do every single interaction we have with them? And if we really parent from that perspective consciously, then everything changes. One thing I would recommend, whether you want to have family meetings or not and all that stuff, and I happen to think it's a great idea, is anytime you have crossed the emotional line, and this is the difference. What I'm talking about is the difference between you using an emotion. Emotions are incredibly useful. They're like your GPS satellites that are letting you know if you're on track or on target or on the right route. But there are times when you feel that emotion coming up, and instead of you using the emotion is now using you. If you've crossed into anger and you are not in the driver's seat anymore, then don't talk to your children. Don't even speak to them. You say this to them: I'm getting a bit angry now, I need some time. And you walk away. Because if you speak while the emotions are in charge, the emotions are going to say things that you are going to regret. And then you're going to have to try to apologize for them. And then your child's going to be getting in therapy at 30 years old because of some stuff you said when they were 7. And so I really believe that, yes, family meetings are a great idea. I do believe that screen time does need to be limited. And I really, truly believe that this is a time for enforcing incredibly important food rules, because we are talking about a virus that goes after people with inflated blood sugar. So you think that, okay, my kid's not overweight, my kid's not diabetic. Yeah, but they could be insulin sensitive and they could be heavily stoked on blood sugar because they just had 3 candy bars, and suddenly the virus is able to take a better hold on them. And so this is a time for enforcing really good food rules. And one of the ways to do that, think about this, the gift you've been given, every parent has been given. If you ever wanted to rectify your children's food rules to some degree, you now actually control everything they eat. You know, they're not going to a friend's house. They're not getting fed at school. They're not going out to the movies with a buddy and getting a chocolate bar. You're in a place where you control what they eat because you're the one controlling what comes into the house. And so there it is, it's in the house. And all I can tell you is this: it'll be bitter and awful for 3 or 4 or 5 days when you try to take them off sugar. If you try and do that, it'll be bitter and awful for a few days, just like it's bitter and awful when you try and get somebody off heroin. But if you pass through that few days, you will be delighted how sweet and even tempered and wonderful your children are when they don't have that influence.
Yeah, I want to comment on Amanda. We found a great way to cut back on the bad stuff. Just don't buy it. Even for me, I love chocolate and I love easy food. Now we're switching to only fruit in the fridge. The kids still want the sugar, but I've just stopped buying it. And it's not that easy. You know, this is one of those things, like Eric was commenting on. Just take the responsibility. You know, it's not necessarily your fault, but take the responsibility. There might not be, and hopefully, you know, God forbid, there's not another time exactly like this, that we're all in the house under the same circumstances. But while we're already here and while we can control, I think it was Renee Jane that said the circle. Put yourself in the middle of the circle. Write down the things that you can control in the middle of the circle. Write the things that you can't control in the outside circle. The food that you bring into the house right now that your children are going to be eating, they are in your inner circle. We need to focus on what is in the inner circle so that we can get better results, you know, for our life in general. Eric, what if you have that child that is really mad? Okay, no, for 2 things. What if you have the child that is really, really mad about now they're only being what they would see as possibly even yucky, or I don't like that, choices in the house? And what do you do with, say, the other parent that might feel that way? Because I know that there are a lot of, if you're on this call, you're taking massive amounts of responsibility, or else you wouldn't be on this call. Or at the very least, you know that you have a call for a different way of life and evolution, and you're walking through the door to get there. I have seen a lot of comments from people on here that their co-parent, either outside or inside the house, is not necessarily on the same page, and then the kids are getting mixed messages about food.
Yeah, that is really tough. So let's before we get to the mixed messages from parents, let's do it like this. I believe that getting people's health and nutrition right is the long game. It's not something you're going to change in 5 minutes. And so the more pressure you put on somebody to change their relationship with food, the more they will resist you. It's kind of like when that friend says, you got to read this book. Have you read the book yet? Did you read the book yet? And pretty much the more they push you, the less you're going to read the book, right? And food can be very much like that. So it is a long game, and it's best won through leadership by example, not by convincing, manipulating, pushing. And so what we tell our clients, when we tell our parents through WildFit, is that you simply want to be the change you want to see in your children. And you know, there's I think an example, I think I even mentioned this in the Little Humans Project, so I won't go into deep detail with it, but the short version is my son used to visit me, grew up with different food rules on the other side with the other parent and with his grandparents, came to visit me, and I made the decision that on short visits, I wouldn't bother trying to change his beliefs. There's no point. If I only had him for 3 days, I didn't want but if I had him for a week or more, I was willing to put up with the 3 days of withdrawal yuckiness in order to have the delightful, sweet, non-sugar kid that comes out afterward. And so we did that. And I remember one day very specifically, I wanted to get him into drinking smoothies instead of that disgusting Sunny Delight and weird orange juice stuff, that pretend juice that they were drinking. And so I made a smoothie, but I made it only for me and my wife and didn't make him one. Didn't offer him one. Didn't ask him to have one. But that's the same method that we use to get kids addicted to alcohol. We get kids interested in alcohol by going, oh, you can't have it. It's for adults only. So I just did the same thing. I said, no, these are for adults. He's like, what? Can I try it? And I go, well, yeah, but I gave him only a little shot glass, only a sip. And the next thing you know, he wanted to have the smoothie. So I really believe in leading by example rather than pushing, especially when it comes to children. Now, let's talk about age groups. If your child is under 5 years old, just do it. Just take control of it. They don't know any better yet. And if you've already made the mistake of letting them know any better, you're still in control of the situation. You can break the addiction for them. But if they're over 5 years old, they're going to be in many situations post-pandemic where they're going to have to decide for themselves. So now forcing them will just cause them to go into rebellion. If you can keep them off sugar and keep them off that stuff in the early days, you've given them a huge amount of freedom because they're not born into addiction. But if they have that stuff when they're really young, by the time they're 5 or 6, they're already addicted. You can't win the battle anymore. And so now what you have to do is the lead by example model. As they get beyond 5, 6, 7, and 8, they start understanding consequences. So you can now say stuff, of course you can have this. Of course you can have it. I just want to remind you that the last time you had this, you ended up having that huge meltdown in the mall. So I just want you to notice that. Then you let them have it. Then they have the meltdown. And you're like, see, it happened again. And they will start connecting the behavioral modification that these foods are doing to them with the food. And they're like, I don't like the consequences anymore. And then as they get older into the teens, like say 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, then what you do, in my opinion, is you start giving them an allowance. And that allowance is the allowance they pay for entertainment. And from then on, if they want that food, they buy it themselves. They buy it themselves. You're out at a restaurant, they want to order a godforsaken Coca-Cola, which frankly is better for washing blood off the sidewalk than drinking as far as I'm concerned. But if they want to buy the Coca-Cola, you go, yes, can we have a separate bill, please? This young man would like to pay for his Coca-Cola on his own. And then they have to deal with the consequences of, I wanted to go to the movies, but now I've bought a Coca-Cola. And it allows them to, so at these different age groups, there's different ways to approach creating that change.
I love that. There was a message from Felicia. Felicia, you shared, I've already made the mistake. We are out of control. Leading by example does not work. How old are your kids, Felicia? Maybe you can pipe in. Oh, it looks like one of them is 10. Okay.
Okay. So Felicia, it's not that it doesn't work. It's that it doesn't work quickly. That's the trouble. We want it to change instantly. It breaks your heart to see them eat this stuff. It breaks your heart to see them wanting it. It breaks your heart to see how the food industry has basically acted like a drug dealer and addicted your child to this stuff. And I'm with you 100%.
Even, you know what, Eric? It's not even those industries. Let me tell you where my son first got a lollipop. Whole Foods.
Yeah.
In the bins.
Food industry.
Right at the front. It's like there were the apples, the oranges, and then the lollipops. And for him, every day we lived right next door. So then every day he associated, I want to go there and like get my lollipop. I would have never given him, he like literally yanked one out, like opened it and gave it to himself. And there we go, Lollipopville.
Yeah, it's true. And dentists even, I mean, even dentists, like I'm amazed. It's even dentists do that and doctors do it. And, they're all drug dealers of a kind. It's just that most of them don't realize that they are. They just think they're being sweet or nice or what have you. And what I think we need to get, for Felicia, what I would say to you is that leadership will work. It just might be that it'll take you some time, and do the things that I've talked about. Please remember, your children are going to do what you do, not what you say. There's a great video that I pushed out on my Instagram account a little while ago. And it was a public service campaign to remind parents that children mimic. And it had like this child following the adult wherever they went and mimicking everything they did, right up to the point where the adult was smoking a cigarette. And then you see this little 3-year-old walking along smoking the cigarette. It was fake, but it was like designed to shock you.
Right.
But that's the truth of it. Your children are watching you all the time. You're the celebrity. You're a celebrity in your own house. You might not feel that way, but your kids are always watching you like they would watch a celebrity. And by the way, in the end, that's why they watch celebrities too. You see, humans are designed to look to what they consider to be alpha, leadership, and then model that behavior. And so as your kids get older, they're going to start modeling rappers, and they're going to start modeling professional athletes. And so you want to do the best you can to provide them with a value system that says what's right and wrong. And so if you are going, oh, you guys shouldn't really eat that chocolate, but I'm going to eat this chocolate over here, well, that's not going to be so functional. And so leading by example.
And don't think they don't know what you're doing.
Exactly. Exactly.
Just like with your cell phone, saying, oh, don't bring that into your room. They know when you're bringing the cell phone into your room. They
really do. And so you really have to be the change you want to see in your children. And then, Felicia, you can slowly start doing the consequence linking, where they get to start to see this stuff, where they start to see it. And like I said, money is a really good one, because it's a great way to start teaching them about money as well. Children need to learn about money young. Look, you can get all this, I don't want my kid thinking about money all the time. Okay, well, that's, like money runs the world at the moment. If you don't, if they have a bad relationship with money, they're going to be behind the game. I'm not saying you have to turn them into greedy and you have to make them want money, but you want them to understand it. So you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone by creating an allowance system where your children are responsible for their own entertainment. And then you begin to make the distinction between entertainment food and food. You say, I'm willing to buy the food. You're the one buying the entertainment food. And you will see that at times they begin making a better decision.
Mm-hmm. I love that so much. I never thought about that before, an entertainment fund and just mingling that with food. That's such a great way to engage the children. Again, I think all the ways that we can get ourselves out of the nagging position is just really going to behoove all of us, because then they become self-directed. And, that's where the true independence and power comes from. I wonder, Eric, with some of the families here who are making the comments that they have already led by not great example. So let's just say at this point, kind of the whole family unit, is not necessarily eating healthy. What are some good first steps that you can give them, maybe especially for people who are not, familiar with Wild Fit and some of the concepts there, where they can start and maybe all just get on the same team and take this on together?
I think one of the things to recognize is that your doctor didn't study food. Your doctor didn't study food. They didn't. It's not their fault. Listen, I love doctors. I am so impressed by anybody who'd be willing to go to school that long, invest that much money. They clearly want to help. Their education system, however, wasn't driven around prevention. It was driven around profiting on the back end of disease. And so I was shocked to find the very first time I asked a doctor that question when I was 21 years old, how long did you go to medical school? It had been 6 years. And then I said, well, how much of that time did you study nutrition? It was none. And now I've asked that question of doctors all over the world, and it's the same thing. The only time I've ever had a doctor say that they've studied some food is because they took an elective. In other words, an optional course. It's not required. Now, why do I say that in the context of your question? If your doctor's not going to study food, somebody better. If your doctor's not going to study food, somebody better. And you know what? This is no different than money. Nobody will ever take as good care of your money as you. So while you might want to have an investment advisor, you should understand what your investment advisor is doing. If you're the CEO of a company, you might not want to do your own accounting, but you better understand some basic accounting so that you can talk to your accountant. And so I want to say, if you want to understand your health, you need to understand food, because that's the primary driver of your health. And so if you want to make a change in the family, there's 2 ways that I can see that are really effective. One is you simply choose to educate yourself incredibly well. What we see very often is people come and do the Wild Fit Quest through Mindvalley. They do the quest on their own. They don't make big pronouncements. They don't tell their whole family, I'm changing everything. I'm going on a diet. We tell them not to do that. We tell them to simply change. In fact, one of my favorite stories of this was I think Juan, I think was his name, in Brazil, signed up for the program. He had no weight to lose. It's not a weight loss program. It's a health transformation program. But a lot of times people go, why would you sign up for that? You didn't have any weight to lose. Well, he didn't. And his wife hated it. She was like, what? Why would you invest that money? Why would you do that? I'm not cooking for you. I'm not making your damn smoothies. I'm not even going to have meals. Like, no. You know what's really crazy? 4 months later, they're sitting having a meal with some friends of theirs, and they look fantastic, and the meal is yummy and healthy, and their friends over the dinner table say, what's going on with you guys? Like, you look transformed. This food is so yummy. What's going on? And as he opened his mouth to talk to them about WildFit, she cut him off, and she sold WildFit.
Oh.
The woman who hated the idea.
Yeah.
He never pushed her. He never tried to convince her. He just led by example. And what did she notice? His skin improved, his energy improved, his sleep improved, his sex drive improved, like stuff got better. And she's like, I'll have what he's having. And so that's the first way to do it, is to simply take charge and say, I am fixing me, and I'm going to be the example that stimulates the change in my family. And the other way to do it is to sit down. If your kids are old enough to have they either have to be old enough, like say 12, 13, 14 and above, or young enough, say sub 5. It's tough in that middle range. Then you've got to do it by leadership, I think. But in those other family, you sit down with the family and go, guys, I really would like for all of us to revisit our relationship with food together. And I'm only going to ask you to do it if you want to. But here's the thing. And here's the beautiful thing you have right now. You're all aware that we've got this virus thing going on out there. And all the evidence is showing is that if we eat really well, it means that we have a much better chance of dealing with the virus. Now, you're not in any danger. The virus is not dangerous for you. It's not. But you could get sick. And if we eat really well, you may not get sick, or you might even recover more quickly. And so I think this is a great time for our family to take a new relationship with food. And how do you guys feel about that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. Has anyone here in the chat box, have they tried these family style meetings? I would just love to hear from you. By the way, Forelia says, that's true. I'm a doctor and I didn't even have a single class on nutrition in 6 years of medical school.
And Fiola, I wonder, I have a question for you. I don't know if you can put it in the chat, but here's my question for you. Had you thought much about that before? Or when I said it now, was it kind of the first time you thought about it? Or did somebody mention it to you before? But here's my real question. When you finally thought about it, did it surprise you? I'd love to know, but it's your call.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I remember one of the first symptoms that I had with a non-healthy lifestyle, let's just say, and I think that this is kind of, it's just very common, especially, in the US and the so much processed foods, was with my gut. I was seeing gastroenterologists, and I was eventually diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. This was like 25 years ago, in my early 20s. But again, I just said all the things that I was raised on, the pretzels, the Pepsis, and all of this stuff. But Eric, I did at 20 years old, I asked my gastroenterologist, do you think that this could be because of my diet? I literally even said, when I really think about it, I don't really eat vegetables. Like I was working full time, I was going to school full time, and, I was eating the food at the mall. That's just what it came down to. And they said, no, I don't think that has anything to do with it. Very, very fascinating. By the way, cleared all of that up with a healthy diet, literally within 6 months. And, here I am. I honestly have no digestive problems ever, well, maybe like twice in 25 years, but these things can definitely be healed. She said it surprised me a lot, he probably surprised me a lot, and I'm very passionate about nutrition, so I educate myself. But my colleagues don't have any interest in nutrition and giving recommendations to patients.
It's absolutely crazy. We had a really interesting story where there was a doctor in Southern California, and he was hypertensive and type 2 diabetic on medication, 5 medications. And he stopped off at Starbucks to get himself a coffee to keep himself awake on the drive to work. And then he crashed his car. And luckily nobody got hurt. And, but he's like fell asleep. All that happened is he fell asleep even though he just bought a coffee. And then he, a couple days later, he's in the rental car because his car's destroyed. Yeah. And so then he fell asleep again. again, and luckily nobody was hurt, including him. But then he had a wake up call. He's like, something's not right. It's first thing in the morning. I'm drinking a massive coffee and I'm falling asleep. And that night, he was home on the internet and he saw a Mindvalley masterclass. He saw a Mindvalley masterclass on WildFit with me and decided to do the WildFit quest. And he lost, I think, 40 pounds. He reversed his hypertension and reversed his type 2 diabetes and got off all 5 medications. He's a doctor. And one of the things he said to me was, you have breathed life back into me as a doctor because now I know how to treat people. And he now uses WildFit in all 3 of his practices. And he and I have we're just in the tail stages of writing a book together called Post Diabetic, which is all about the idea that diabetes is reversible. In fact, we don't even consider diabetes to be a disease. We think of it as an injury, a repetitive stress injury caused by lifestyle.
That's amazing good news for anyone on here that might be experiencing diabetes. I really need to share this with my dad, who I believe was recently diagnosed diabetic as well. Anna wants to know, what may I be missing if I'm doing healthy food choices for years and living what she considers to be a healthy lifestyle without pushing or judging, but neither her 11-year-old boy nor her husband, but they still won't follow her healthy lifestyle?
You know, Anna, one of the problems that is for you is that you are always doing it, so they don't get to see the contrast. That's a bit difficult. You know, what's really great is when somebody was like with their family eating the junk, and then they change, and then they lose these inches and they lose those pounds, and their skin clears up and they suddenly have more vibrance and their moods improve. Then the family goes, hey, what's going on? I'll have what you're having. The trouble is that if you are always living like that, it's a little bit tougher, because what they don't understand is that the way you are is as a result of the way you've been eating, and because they can't see the contrast. I'll give you a really good example of this, funny enough, is we are about to have the greatest wake up ever on earth. And it works like this. We accept in our population that the North American natives, that the South American natives, that the natives of Australia, the Aboriginal people of Australia, that they're all conservationist people. But that's actually not totally true. I'll hold off because I know that I'm going to offend somebody here. What I want to tell you is that those peoples arrived on each of those continents and obliterated almost everything on those continents and ate them to death. Like, there were 11 species of elephants in the Americas eaten into extinction. Why those peoples may have become conservationists is because when Europeans arrived, they sped up the rate of destruction and extinction. And it was as a result of that perspective that those people became conservationists. Because when they were pushing animals into extinction, it took them 3 generations. They didn't see it happening. Yeah. How does that matter now? Well, the Indians now in India can see the Himalayas for the first time in 3 decades. The air quality in Los Angeles is the best air quality in the country at the moment. It's best that it's been.
Trust me, it looks entirely different than what it
looks like a totally different place. The water quality here, our beaches always used to have litter watching up on the beach all the time. I just assumed it was ocean junk. I just assumed it was just, that's how much. No, there's no litter on the beach. And you know what? In the old days, like a month and a half ago, the resorts were cleaning the beaches every day. Nobody's cleaning the beaches anymore because they're not working. And yet there's no litter on the beach. Now, here's what's going to happen. The lockdown is going to end. And when the lockdown ends, the Himalayas are going to fade away in a week or 2 or 3. It took 3 decades to make them disappear, but in 3 weeks, they're going to be gone again. The air quality in Los Angeles will be gone within a week.
Yeah.
And the perspective we will gain from that might be enough to create the tipping point in the population to begin changing regulations and voting for the correct politicians and stuff. Now, unfortunately, and in your case, you don't have the benefit of that contrast because you've been living that way for a while. All I can suggest to you is that you start to begin to move toward the education path. And what that means is, and listen carefully to this, is important. Instead of trying to stimulate change, try to stimulate curiosity. Instead of trying to stimulate change, try to stimulate curiosity. If you're trying to stimulate change, then that's a step too far very often. Whereas if you try to stimulate curiosity, things might get a little bit different. Not pushing, not in your face, but for example, there is a significant amount of news right now that suggests that sugar is a major problem in COVID. That's a reasonable conversation to have around the dining room table. You're not trying to get them to change. You're just trying to get them curious. Yes. And it is through that curiosity that they may start asking questions, which will earn you the right to stimulate change.
Yes. I absolutely love that, Eric. And always especially with children, but also with other adults. If we can stimulate curiosity instead of this environment of wanting to force change, we will gain more friends by doing so. That is absolutely no doubt. Magali wants to know, do you have any advice on toddlers that don't want to taste new foods at all?
Well, I have a thought for you that you won't like, and then, yeah, maybe some advice. Here's the first thought that you don't like. Toddlers, it's really interesting. At first, they'll put anything in their mouth. Isn't it true? I mean, anything. Like they're on the floor, it's in their mouth.
Yeah.
And then over time, what'll begin to happen is they'll start to figure out what they like, and then they won't want to change. Then they start getting reluctant to take new stuff. So there's a few things that you do advice-wise about that. One, you're going to not like because it's in the past. And I don't want you to, the deal here has to be, I can share with you my idea. And if it's too late for you, you realize it in case you have another child or somebody you can share it with, but you don't feel guilty about it. There's no point in that. Everything that's happened up to now has been perfect. So if it's young enough, then what you do is you apply the principle you're talking about to the kind of foods you want to apply to. In other words, don't let them have those foods until they're 5 and 6 years old, and then they won't want them. I know it's too late for you at this point, but that really works. My son would go to parties when he was 2 years old, and they would go, do you want it? Do you want this candy? And he'd be like, no, because he didn't want to try new stuff. He wanted what he knew, which was an apple. And parents are like, oh, how did you get him to do that? Well, by not giving it to him. The rule is they get to a point where they don't like new stuff. So why don't you keep all the junk away until it would be new stuff, and then they won't like it. Now, I realize that.
What age about do you think that is?
I think it starts becoming a problem at 2 and 3 years old. And my opinion is hold that stuff away from children until they're 5 or 6.
Okay.
I wouldn't even let children have, Zoe has never had refined sugar. I'm not saying it hasn't snuck in here or there in a restaurant, but honestly, she's never had refined sugar, not ever. And she's almost 4 years old. And that means that when she finally does have refined sugar, and by the way, I've had all these parents go, you're removing their choice because when they have dairy products, they're going to get sick. Because if you don't have dairy products as a baby and then one day you drink them, they make you sick. And they're like, you're removing her choice. And I'm saying, no, I'm giving her choice. I'm giving her choice by not letting her get addicted to that stuff before she's conscious of the consequence. So in my opinion, hold that stuff away from your children. And by the way, you wouldn't let your pets eat that stuff. Like that actually cracks me up. You wouldn't, look, the puppy wants a little Coca-Cola. You would never do that. Not ever. And for some reason, but if your puppy could talk, maybe you would, right?
That's actually mind-blowing. I have never, ever thought in that way. And that is completely true. Wow.
It is. It's crazy. They're like, oh no, the dog, don't give the dog that. Oh, come here, little girl. You have it. Why don't you test it on the dog first? I'm kidding. I love dogs. I'm kidding.
Oh my goodness.
So now the problem is that relative to this question, unfortunately, it's probably too late. The kids already had some of those things, and that's the difficulty. So now how do you get them to try new stuff? Well, one of the things I might consider doing is don't let them have it. Like, honestly, sit at the dining room table and put broccoli on all the plates, but not theirs. And then talk about how yummy it is. Man, this is really not in an obvious way, in a more passive way. And then they're like, well, how come I didn't get any? They'll wonder why they didn't get any.
No, Eric, you know what? This really, really does work. I'll share an example for you, Magali, with my toddler. So my toddler, I feel like I'm actually still nursing. I'm still nursing, Eric, 28 months. I'm still over here. By the way, everyone, this is another topic for another day, but inside the Little Humans collection, I had my favorite conversation to date in the all of Little Humans collection was with Eric on breastfeeding. And I love
one of my favorite conversations.
I love him even more because he is one of our only male guests. And he is the one that I had the conversation with. And truly, it could have just gone on for 45 minutes. It was amazing. But this is about my son, who is, almost 2.5 now. He started off a very, very healthy diet. He was actually doing chicken livers and egg yolks and all the vegetables, loved all the super healthy things until I think this was about 20 months. He started going on a complete vegetable standoff. Like, it literally, switched from, night to day. And I think he probably went on the standoff, I want to say more or less for a couple months, but this wasn't conscious when I was doing it at the time, but now I realize it's because we stopped giving him the vegetables. And my husband and I would have the vegetables on our plates, but we genuinely love vegetables. So our conversation around, oh my God, this meal is amazing. And just us talking about it, our son did start coming over to our bowls. He wanted to use his fork and wanted to have some of daddy's food. He's totally back on vegetables again. This was, it took probably like a couple months to completely shift everything, but he's been, on the vegetables now for like 5 months straight. So you definitely can create change, but Eric, I have a question around something that you said about children going to the birthday parties and these things. And so does Tanjay, who says, our daughter is nearly 6, decided completely on her own to cut out sugar 10 weeks back when my husband and I went through WildFit. We thought that this was great, but now we're uncertain. We don't want to create unnecessary worry in her life. Her sister died without warning 2 years ago. And so she has been very health conscious. I'm so sorry, Tanjay. Our worry is that the focus on not eating sugar and dairy, like all of the other kids around her, might result in unhealthy food issues or even eating disorders. And she says that some family members have suggested this too. She's only 6. We feel that she might be too young to think about these food choices. Example, when the other kids were in kindergarten and were given sweet buns and hot chocolate, she did not want any, even though she loves it. So she just sat and watched the other kids have it. Here in Norway, all kids have candy every Saturday, and every birthday party is all sugar. How do you suggest that we best handle this? I think her main question is around not wanting to create any sort of worry or potential battles with food-based disorders.
All right. I'm going to say something potentially unpopular. And that is that it is my considered opinion that very often food disorders are actually more biochemical than they are psychological. Okay. And that's not a very popular opinion. I realize I might be offending some people. I'm hoping that I'm not offering any offense, so I'd prefer you didn't take it. Yeah. I'm offering a point of view. I have seen over 20,000 clients go through the WildFit experience in 130 countries over the last 5-6 years. And I have been blown away that we have never, ever targeted WildFit at people with food disorders, because it's not meant for that. It's meant for people who are wanting, it's just a different thing. But the number of people who have come to the program who have then told us after the fact that they came to the program with bulimia and I was going to say dyslexia, anorexia, and then it's just gone. It's gone. And I'm going to tell you that a big part of that is there are 2 things in WildFit that we do that I think influences that. And this is not 1 or 2 anecdotal cases. I'm talking tens of them. Like it's frequent. And I'll tell you, I believe there's 2 reasons. The one is that food disorders are amplified by malnutrition. So in other words, when somebody is really malnourished, then what happens is that that stimulates a desire for eating that's irrational. The hungrier you get, the more flexible your food rules will become. That's a design. It's a design to protect you from starving to death in nature. You haven't eaten, the hunting's not been good, and suddenly you're like so hungry that you'll now eat plants that you wouldn't normally have eaten because you're like, you got to eat something. And so, of course, in our world, what that means is we'll eat anything that's put in front of us. And there's so many bad options put in front of us. So what I believe happens is that the food, the food eating disorder thing comes along as a matter, first of all, psychologically, of body disorder stuff, which is body image stuff, I should say, which just drives me insane. I go into airports and I see photographs of genetically unlikely women that have been professionally photographed by magicians with cameras, that have had artists who call themselves makeup people, but they're really professional painters. And then after all that, they then grab a digital specialist and alter it further. And then our daughters and our mothers and our sisters and our wives are all walking around comparing themselves to this genetically unlikely, impossible, not true thing. And so there's that to deal with. Then that moves into this, well, now I'm going to try and lose all this weight and I'm going to have an eating disorder. Then that triggers malnourishment issues, and then that amplifies the eating disorder. Yeah. So what I would say is, if you're paying attention to that kind of stuff, the first thing is Zoe, my little Zoe, I don't know, can you see? There's my little Zoe.
Yeah, Zoe
is genetically fortunate. what I mean is she's symmetrical and she's pretty. We don't tell her that. We don't go, my God, you're gorgeous. You're so, we don't tell her that. I'm not going to get her self-esteem based on her appearance. That's a ridiculous thing to have her self-esteem. I talk to her about the things she has control over. Like, man, you're smart. You're so cheerful. You have such a good energy. I'm not here to talk to her about her appearance because I don't want her to get tied into that. And that's the beginning of her not having a food disorder, I'm hoping. And then the next piece is that not allowing them to get onto foods that are fundamentally addictive. Sugar's addictive. If your daughter is having the wisdom at the age of 6 to not want to snort cocaine, eat sugar, then don't let her. And if your cocaine snorting friends are like, you should let her have cocaine because when she goes to college, she'll go crazy. No, it's an addictive substance. And if she has the wherewithal to not want to have it at this stage, then I'm not saying you have to reward it. I'm not saying you have to go, oh, you're such a good girl. None of that. You just let her do it because she's giving herself freedom later in life. Anybody who has given up sugar knows it is a powerful addiction to break. So why force her to make the addiction?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Eric. Yeah. And I love that you're so passionate about all of this because you guys see so passionate because he sees thousands of tens of thousands of cases and probably even more at this point of time of how people's lives have drastically shifted by getting rid of the sugars. As I stated, even our admin assistant and I were talking before jumping on here. And by the way, now I feel this way. I used to feel that way. I'm sure that if she could go back and rewind it, she would want to be feeling that way since being 10 years old, not just, since last year. So thank you for asking that question. That was a really great one. I'm sorry, but somebody in the chat box asked a question. I'm not going to be able to find it if I scroll back, but it was a great question actually about, here we go. From Balsam, thank you so much for asking this. My daughter is 29 and has high insulin levels and is pregnant. What advice might give to her?
Okay. So, we always have to draw the line between, giving out, say, what we might call nutrition, common sense nutritional advice and what crosses the line into medical advice. So you're talking about a medical condition during pregnancy. So take everything I say and go talk to a medical professional about it, but preferably a medical professional who studied food. That's the first thing I would say. Mm-hmm. But now what I would suggest to you is that for your own health, it's likely that there's been an unhealthy relationship with carbohydrate foods and sugars that has created that insulin problem in the first place. I'm not doing an exam. I'm not a doctor. I'm just saying it's likely. And so one of the things that I would very strongly recommend is that you take a look at doing something like what we call Wild Fit Spring or a period of ketogenic eating where you take yourself off those sugars and rebalance your insulin production and your insulin sensitivity. And not only should you be doing that for yourself, for your own health, but here's something else that's really important to understand. We used to think of genetics as just being like a bunch of bricks you put together. You took 50 bricks from your mom and 50 bricks from your dad and you're 100 bricks. And those bricks are they're what they are. But we now know that they're not like that. We know that there are certain things that are like that. Your eye color is like that. Your hair color is like that. Your skin color is like that. But there are other things that will express based on your behavior and also that you will be pre-programmed with based on your mother's behavior. And so if you are eating a lot of sugar during the pregnancy, your children will be born with a craving for sugar. And they will also potentially be born with the propensity for insulin sensitivity issues and so forth. So it's really important to be eating a really solid diet during that gestation period. And by the way, if you're having wild swinging cravings, it's largely because there's a massive imbalance somewhere, an imbalance that would be fixed by eating really seriously high quality proteins, copious amounts of healthy fat, like fish, like good healthy fishes and meats and stuff, like really good fat, and a variety of vegetables, and not even all that much fruit, and certainly not bread and all that kind of stuff. Now, this is a little hardcore, and I'm the last one to suggest anybody should use willpower to do that. They should get the support they need to change their psychology, like we do at WildFit. But if you're now facing that in pregnancy, I'm saying willpower is important. Like you may have to rely on that right this minute.
It is super, super important. Actually, Eric, I had in my 3rd trimester, well, actually throughout my whole pregnancy, I had rather high hormone levels that at the beginning of the pregnancy caused some thyroid issues. I had nothing pre-existing with that, going into the pregnancy, and that resolved itself. But then towards the end, I also had high insulin, which is pregnancy induced diabetes, I think is what it's called. What I did, I was super mindful about the refined carbohydrates that I was eating. The things like the quick cook rice, the refined breads, the things that Eric are talking about, truly, because I had to do the, the blood levels like 5 times a day. And I would notice a drastic difference if I did not have the refined carbohydrates in there. I still ate the sweet potatoes. I had like the squash, the pumpkins, eggcorn squash, those type of things. But just getting rid of quick cook oatmeal, quick cook rice, and the refined carbohydrates will really take that down. And for me, it took it down to a workable level. Again, I'm not a doctor, so I can't give medical advice. That's just my personal story to share within there. This is a great question. Eric, when you're talking about sugar, can you tell us exactly your definition? Because I'm having questions about dates, fruit. What is in general, what do you classify as sugar?
All right. So we are, we're a little lazy with language sometimes. Like we'll use one word to talk about a variety of things. So for example, we can ask the question, is meat good or bad? Yes. It can be good or bad, and because there's definitely bad meat and there's definitely good meat and there's all kinds of questions in the middle. Obviously, if somebody's a vegan, maybe they think all meat is bad, but the same thing is going on with carbs. So what we need to know is that carbohydrates are sugars. So that's interchangeable. We have 2 words that mean the same thing. If it's a carbohydrate, it's a sugar. If it's a sugar, it's a carbohydrate. There we go. So now, is sugar good or bad? Yes, it's good and bad. There are good sugars and there are bad sugars. The sugars that are insanely bad are the refined sugar and corn syrup and all that garbage. That stuff is insanely bad. It is shockingly bad. It is addictive, and it is simply sent to take away your freedom around food. It's there to mess up your taste buds so that you don't like other food anymore. Like, one of the reasons that once kids have had candy, they don't want to eat apple. Apple's just not as sweet. The joke is when somebody gets off sugar, it's very much like this. When you're outside in the bright light and then you come inside, it seems really dark inside. And then you realize, actually, my eyes are adjusting. It's not that dark. Most people's taste buds have been in the bright, glaring brightness of sugar. And so they're dim when they eat other things. What our clients uniformly, I'm talking in the 98th percentile, will tell us that their taste buds rectify, and suddenly they're tasting things like broccoli and they go, oh my God, it's sweet. It's so sweet. And so, I'm kind of like, I'm so passionate about this whole thing, but it's like, I guess I don't know. I'm just saying, we really have to make the change here. We really have to make the change. And there is the matter of trying to deal with it with willpower. But one thing I really want to come back to is the best foundation that we can give kids at this particular stage. That helps so very much. And I think I lost track of the original question in there somewhere, but
no, it's okay. We were just talking about sugars. And I mean, what you're saying is that it's all over the spectrum of the taste buds.
and let's go back to let me finish on that sugar thing. You're absolutely right. So there are definitely infinitesimally bad sugars. Then there are there's terrible sugars. Then there's bad sugars, like, refined flour and white rice and all that kind of stuff. Then there's like not good sugars. And that's like rice, even, like healthy, whatever. It's not a good sugar. It's like, you don't want to have it every day by any stretch. And then there are good sugars. But like anything, you can have too much of a good thing.
Yeah.
So the good sugars are fresh fruits and vegetables that contain natural sugars in them. Carrots are full of sugar.
Yeah.
Apples are full of sugar. Honey, good for you, full of sugar. But remember, in nature, it was available for a week or 2, and then it was gone. It's not something you could have every day. And there's no sugar that's good every single day.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Eric, do you have a preference if you are going to just be making something a little bit sweet and say baking at home? Do you have a preference between honey or maple syrup? Do those metabolize any differently?
I can't tell you the science on whether they metabolize any differently. Yeah. I'll tell you that they're both okay for me. Yeah. But honey is the better one. And the only reason I say that is that we've been having honey for hundreds of thousands, if not even potentially millions of years. So, we have an evolutionary relationship with honey. By the way, here's the fascinating thing about that. There's a bird in Africa. It's called a honey guide. It's a little bird. And when it spots you, it goes like this with its wings. and you look up at it. And as you look up at it, it then flies toward a beehive and it takes you there. It takes you there. And it only does this for humans and honey badgers. It takes you there. And then you get there and you crack the tree open and you smoke the bees out or whatever. And then you eat some of the honey. And then the Bushman lore of this is that if you don't leave some honey for the honey guide, next time he'll take you to a lion or a hidden python in the tree. But the fact is this bird's behavior is proven scientifically. Yeah. This is not an animal that was taught a trick by Disney. This is an animal that has an evolutionary relationship with humans. We've been having that honey for that time. So I would choose honey as a truly a food that we truly have an evolutionary relationship with. I would choose maple syrup as an occasional treat rather than regurgitated garbage syrup.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much for answering that. Madeline says, my son has local honey to help with allergies every morning. Is there anything else that you recommend food-wise that
my son has allergies with what?
She's saying that they use local honey every day to treat her son's allergies, and wonder if there's any other foods that you recommend that helps with allergies.
Well, you see, a lot of times I am not one of the people that thinks that food is medicine. I don't like that expression. I even found it on our website.
Tell me about it. Oh my God, exciting. When I hear this,
I don't like the idea of food being medicine, because food being medicine says, wait till you get sick and then eat this thing. Medicine is for curing. Medicine is for curing. Food is not medicine. Food is required. It's not medicine. Now, there are some foods that can be medicine-like. I accept that. But we shouldn't be thinking of food as medicine. Like, here's the thing. If you have scurvy, you don't take oranges as medicine. You have scurvy because you didn't take oranges. You have scurvy because you didn't get enough. So food is not medicine. Food is required. It's the absence of the food that creates the disease, which then requires medicine. So I don't like the idea of that. So the question here is treating food like medicine. Are there any other foods that could help with the allergies? I would put to you that 9 times out of 10, it's not something you need to add. It's something you need to take away. And so what are the common things that trigger allergies in children? Dairy products. I mean, if your children have ear infections, nose infections, throat infections, runny nose, sinuses, skin infections, acne, then get them off dairy products. And I would put to you that I would be shocked if 90% was not taken care of by that one thing alone. Wheat also can trigger allergies in children. And also, so can all the E numbers and weird artificial crap, because when you put it into the body, it doesn't have a role. So now your body's immune system has to go, what's this crap they put in? I'm going to have to do something with that. So your immune system's busy dealing with this stuff, which means now a cat walks in the room and your body normally would have gone, oh, look, a cat, let me produce some histamines. But now your immune system's so stressed out for everything, boom, allergies. Mm-hmm. I was like that. I had terrible allergies to cats and dust. I mean, it was awful. And you know what? No more. I love cats. They can crawl all over me. I mean, I've had cheetahs licking the skin off my hand, no allergies, house cats everywhere. I'm not allergic anymore because my body still might have a histamine reaction to the cat. That's probably a normal thing, but my immune system is so unstressed by everything else that I don't have a response.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you. I love that reframe about this food as medicine. That is totally going to stick with me. Patricia, I'm going to kind of answer this question for you, and I want Eric to correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, to summarize her question, it's that her kids love having a little something sweet after dinner, and she's wondering, how is dark chocolate as something that's the little extra sweet after dinner? I'll just let you answer. I think I know what you're going to say.
Who's asking?
Patricia.
Patricia is asking for a friend.
Yeah.
Right, the kids. I don't know if Patricia's asking for a friend. I think Patricia might be asking for Patricia, but either way, Patricia, I'm kidding. I'm sure you're asking for your kids. I'm sure. So here's the thing. Dark chocolate, I eat dark chocolate from time to time. I just make sure that it's not sweetened with garbage sugar. I also make sure that it absolutely is like proper dairy-free dark chocolate. And that's just my view of it. But I certainly wouldn't have it every day. I wouldn't have anything every day. You know, the only thing I have every day is air and water. That's it. That's the only thing I have every day. The rest of my time, I'm cycling through stuff because the body is meant to have a variety of things on seasonal fluctuations. Now, you want to have a little dark chocolate at the end of the day because you want a little bit something sweet. Yeah, you could do that. But I'm telling you, it's not the best idea in the world. You don't really want to do anything that's going to get you starting to produce insulin before you go to bed. You don't want that. Insulin defeats human growth hormone, and you produce human growth hormone while you're sleeping. So if you eat anything that causes insulin production right before you go to bed, you're actually neutralizing your own human growth hormone, as I understand it. And so by the way, I learned this from bodybuilders that are telling me that you can't eat sugar when you're taking human growth hormone to build their bodies, right? So insulin breaks it down. So what I would say is that's not really the best idea. And then the other thing is you got to ask them how they learned that. Again, because we're asking about the children. How did they learn that idea? Where did they get that idea from? And then how can we maybe create a new customer, a new example around that, or that we make it something that we do from time to time. But one thing I want to share with you is that if you think you can ration control children, like you can have a little piece of chocolate, you can have a little bit, you're simply building the binge. You're just building the day they're going to binge when they finally have freedom to deal with it. And I'll give you such a cool example of this. I shared this on an interview the other day. I have this aunt. I haven't seen her in many, many years. My uncle passed away, and it's a long story, but I haven't seen her since. But I'll tell you, this woman, I swear she's like one of the most controlling people I've ever seen ever. And you know what? We need controlling people in our world. I don't mean, it's just, I don't necessarily want it in my life all the time. But some people will be familiar with Quality Streets, the little Quality Streets candies, right? High quality candies, right? And so we'd go to we would occasionally have Quality Streets. We went to her house, and we knew that there was a rule, only one. When they pass the can around, it's only one. And so we went off to South Africa to visit, and we're having this family Christmas, and we're all sitting around the table. And I've got this girlfriend of mine with me, my very first girlfriend, and she's at the table, and the can goes around the table, and each kid only takes one, and each adult, and everybody knows. And the joke of it is, it's her rule. Nobody else is down for this rule, but it's her rule. So it's how it is. And everybody takes one, even her husband, he only takes one. And it goes all the way around to my girlfriend. She takes one, and then they put the can on the table. And then after about 5 minutes, my girlfriend picks the can up, and she wants to take a second one, but she's polite. You know, she's a polite girl. So she offers the can, like holds the can up to my uncle, my aunt's husband, and says, would you like another one? And he knows damn well you're not allowed. He totally knows you're not allowed, but he doesn't want to be rude. And he takes one out. And then everybody has two. And you could see my aunt like steam coming out of her ears. But here's the thing. That whole thing of forcing you to only have one simply builds the craving for you to want to have more. And so frankly, if your kids are saying, I'd like to have a little dark chocolate at the end of the meal, rather than saying, here, just have a little one, let them have as much as they want. They won't want it the next day. They likely won't. But if you make them only have a little bit of one, they're going to want it every night. That's a theory. I'd love to hear you test it and tell me about it.
I think that's totally true, and speaks to someone's point in the chat box earlier that said, it's when we were talking about sugar, and they specifically said, I feel really sick when I eat too much sugar. Just like today, I said it at the beginning of the call. What did I say? I am an 8 out of 10 today. I knew why. I ate cookies yesterday. I mean, I knew why. It's like I'm not, my whole energy, metabolism, everything, you know, I did eat too many cookies, but I wanted to eat too many cookies yesterday. And guess what? I'm not eating cookies today. I have zero desire to eat a cookie today. I am like, just thinking about it, you know, makes me feel sick. Okay, so Samsung has a question. It's around supplements. What's your feeling on supplements, Eric?
Wow, you know, okay, I'm going to, my general feeling about supplements is the vast majority of supplements that are sold through fear and manipulation and have no business being ingested by people. But that's not that all supplements are that way. It's just that majority of supplements are being sold without science. They're being sold on marketing fears and what have you, and so on. So that's my first statement. So my second statement is that I believe that what people should be doing is doing everything they can to get their physical needs met through as natural means possible first. So for example, if somebody wants to make sure that they're getting enough vitamin D, then they got to go out and get some sunlight because they can manufacture their own vitamin D. Do not buy the breakfast cereal because it says it has vitamin D added. You know, recently I saw this, that I don't know if it was cornflakes or some other breakfast cereal. It said that had vitamin D added, but when they tested them, it had more glyphosate in it than vitamin D. I mean, no, you make your own vitamin D. Don't trust Kellogg's with that. So, you know, and so you first try to live as whole and complete a physical existence as you can. And then if you then have a measured observance, like if you observe a measured deficiency, then now you have to go, okay, I'm deficient in something. I've got a test and I'm deficient. Then again, what you would try to do at that point is find a natural whole food way or a natural lifestyle way of dealing with it. So for example, if somebody found themselves with a vitamin D deficiency, the first thing we would say is, all right, for the next couple of weeks, you got to get half an hour of sun every day. to try to fix it naturally. If failing all of that, they still had a measured deficiency, which they likely would, because we don't spend enough time outside in the sun, because our soil has been depleted by bad farming practices, because there is all kinds of toxicity and heavy metals in the world. So likely there are some deficiencies. At that point, you would then take supplements to deal specifically with those deficiencies. And I'll add one more thing to that. During this time right now, I am telling you that I would absolutely be topping up on vitamin C, magnesium, and zinc. I would be taking those things because most of us are running fairly low on those things regularly anyway. And we absolutely know that vitamin C is effective with a variety of coronaviruses. So there's every reason to believe that it's effective with this one as well. And there is right now a double-blind placebo test going on in China with intravenous IVs, with intravenous vitamin C. And they're only testing it on ICU patients that are in critical care. And so far, I heard from a doctor who got a preliminary report from it, it was saving 30% of the lives, vitamin C. So yes, I think during this time, it might be a good idea to supplement those things.
Amazing. And Eric, what about everything that you just shared? I think that is kind of cross-contextual for vegetarian and not. You know, vegetarian, do you have any specific recommendations for people who are plant-based or vegetarian?
I don't really want to talk about it.
Okay.
Listen, no, I'm kidding. you know me, nothing's off limits with me. You can ask me anything. In the past, I would have been more, well, yeah, you could try eating a different variety of legumes and you could try to supplement this way and that way. But right now, I would not want to play any games with antibodies. I want my body to be able to make antibodies. And antibodies, most people don't know, are proteins. They're proteins. And the only way you can build proteins is if you have all 20 amino acids, all of them. You need all of them. And so here's the problem is that you manufacture 11, but 9 you cannot make. You must ingest them. And so this whole idea of, are you getting enough protein? It's a ridiculous question. Are you getting enough protein? That's like saying, are you getting enough air? The question is not, are you getting enough air? The question is, are you getting enough oxygen? And so when you ask, are you getting enough protein? That's an invalid question because you could be eating incomplete proteins, which you are. If you are eating an all plant-based diet, you are eating a variety of incomplete proteins. Now, you might be eating enough incomplete proteins to make up for it if you're really doing the research and figuring it out, but otherwise you're eating incomplete proteins. And so during this time, I got on the phone with a really good friend of mine. He's a fairly serious film producer. He's made 30 movies with everybody from Jason Statham to Charlize Theron, and he's a vegetarian. The only time he eats meat is when he comes to Africa and we go hunting, he'll make an exception, but that's it. Otherwise he doesn't. I called him at the beginning of the pandemic and I said, please, once a week, some wild caught fish. You need to make sure you're getting whole proteins right now because you need to be able to build the antibodies. And so if somebody and by the way, even the Vegetarian Society of America says, if you choose a vegetarian lifestyle, you're going to need to consider supplementation for B12 and amino acids. And that's just the way it is. I don't like saying it. I know a bunch of vegetarians that were on the call used to like me and now they don't. I understand it's a political conversation. I'm just sharing with you what I believe to be the case after over 20 years of research.
And I think they genuinely want to know. Neha, let me know if that has been useful for you. So are you suggesting then that it would be B12 and then also just another full spectrum amino acid? I take amino acids like once a week. But personally, I actually notice a huge, not necessarily spike in my energy, but I feel vital, like, so I can feel it in my system. Yeah, she says yes. That was really great. I followed a plant-based diet supported by experts for years, but I started to feel undernourished. Okay, well, Anna, you're listening to your body. I mean, another great part of the conversation is listen to your own bodies.
Anna, that's a story that's being told everywhere now. 85% of people who experiment with veganism will give it up in the end because their body will demand so. They'll be able to do it for some years, but eventually their bodies generally, and every now and again, I mean, an exception to that rule, but you're absolutely okay to listen to your body in that case for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Last thing I'm going to ask on that topic is children in vegan lifestyles. Same. I'm assuming this is applying.
It's the same. I mean, guys, look, dung beetles eat, excuse me, but they eat poop.
Yeah.
They eat poop, you know, and I think it's disgusting that they do that. And I think that I can come up with all kinds of political reasons that they shouldn't eat poop. It's gross, it's smelly. And besides which, it's violation of privacy. Imagine if you found out somebody was eating your poop. I mean, it's wrong on every level that they eat poop, except it's right on one level. It's right on this level, that's their evolutionary responsibility. They have the ability to process poop, and they require poop. So if we talk to them and we get them to join a political campaign of non-poopitarians, they are non-poopitarians, then they will go extinct rapidly because of that. And I don't know how else to put this. Homo sapiens has been omnivorous before we were even sapiens. Sapiens have been around 300,000 years. There's not been ever, not once, a multi-generational society of successful vegetarians ever. It's never been there, ever. Even India, that's experimenting with it now, they're not vegan, they're vegetarian. And weirdly, they're having dairy products which have their own health consequences, but it's allowing them to have whole proteins and B12. And so I do not think that experimenting with vegetarianism for your children is a good idea at all. Listen, the science is so, like, if you get away from the politics of it, sperm health and egg health is damaged by vegetarianism, by veganism. It's damaged. Your sperm and eggs are less healthy. That's basically, if we really want to control the population problem on the planet, we just make everybody vegan. And within a few generations, we will be sterile and we won't be able to have children. Like, please do not force your children into vegetarianism. If your, generally daughter, but if your son or daughter comes to you and says, wow, I just watched the movie Babe and I want to be a vegetarian for a while, don't give them any grief about it. Let them experiment with it for a while. Because if you give them grief about it, now you're feeding into possible food problems, right? But please don't push them to do it. Please don't try to manipulate them. You don't talk to them about how evil it is that animals die, because guess what? They're going to die anyway. The issue is not whether or not an animal lives or dies. The issue is the quality of the life that it lived.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Eric. Last question, and I'm going to ask this one because a couple of people, actually somebody at the very beginning of the episode said, oh, damn, you're going to be talking about food today and I'm fasting. So I'm going to go back to that. We have another question about how do you feel about intermittent fasting?
I think intermittent fasting is a great idea. We don't preach it. We don't teach it in the WildFit Quest, but we talk about it in the Living WildFit program in the membership afterward. The reason it's not part of the quest is, well, guys like people finish the quest. One of the reasons they finished the quest, it's now twice been the highest rated program on the Mindvalley platform by client feedback. We have our little trophies over here.
Amazing.
The reason that they finish it is we gave them the minimum opportunities to fail. So if we introduce intermittent fasting, it's just one more rule for them to break. Every time you break a rule on your diet, your self-esteem goes down. Every time your self-esteem goes down, you want to eat some garbage. So we make WildFit as easy as possible in order to create the lasting change for people. That's one of the reasons it works. So intermittent fasting is incredibly important. Our ancestors did it, but they didn't do it consciously. In fact, just 6 weeks ago, I was with the Hadza Bushmen. I asked the chief, do you guys ever go on calorie restriction? Do you ever like just stop eating for a while, maybe for religious purposes or something? He looked at me like I was a crazy person. Why on earth would we do that? Why on earth would you do that? We eat whenever food is available. But remember that in their world, food isn't always available. So they do fast. They fast when Mother Nature wants them to, or basically circumstantially makes them. And so it is absolutely, I believe that it's a great idea to stop eating 3-4 hours before you go to bed. Definitely not sugar, because you don't want the insulin production messing with your own natural human growth hormone. You don't want that. So I think that intermittent fasting is really valuable and it should be practiced. Our ancestors were forced into it. So we have developed the systems, not only the systems to cope with it, but we've also developed the ways of taking advantage of it. Think about this. If you were in charge of repairing the body, and you have to repair the digestive system, do you want it actively processing food while you repair it? No. You want it all cleaned out and empty. Now you can go do the repair work. Well, if your digestive system is never cleaned out and empty, then it's never going to do the repair work, which means you're going to have problems. You know, yeah, just this on what's going on right now is I think that I really am a big fan of the idea that this whole reset that we're going through in the world, it gives us all really a chance to prepare for what's coming next. We know that what's coming next will not be the way it was before. There will be different economic conditions. There will be civil liberties eroded by what's going on right now. We will be living in a different world when this is done. And here's what we know about that world. We know that we need to be as healthy as possible with the strongest possible immune system, because this could happen again. We know that we need to have the best career development we could have. That's why it's so good to be part of the Mindvalley community, where you have access to such good education in so many different areas. And there's a ton of other things you can be learning. I want to put to you, use this time as best that you can. Use this time to connect with your families. Use this time to work on you. Use this time to get stronger and smarter, so that when this is over, you're ready to be one of the people that will absolutely crush it during the recession. Because I want to remind you that most of the unicorn companies that you've ever seen, I know you probably have no desire to start a billion-dollar company yourself, but they are an indication of something. Most of those unicorn businesses have started during recessions. The next crop of multimillionaires and millionaires and billionaires will start their businesses over the course of the next 2 years. And so there's going to be a ton of opportunity. As big corporates and big funds have pulled back from everything, all the opportunities that they were sucking up are now available again. And so please be ready for yourself. Whatever's next for you. Do you have that book that you've always wanted to write? Write it. Is that musical instrument you always want to learn? This is the time. Use this time so that you look back. Like, let me put it one more way. Right now, if you look back at the way you've lived the lockdown so far, is the present you completely happy with how the past you lived it? Because I think maybe I've noticed that a lot of people are like, man, I really could have done a bit more with this couple of weeks I've had. If I'd known it was going to be this long, I would have done more with it. Well, guess what? It's going to be another month to 6 weeks. So use this next month to 6 weeks as best possible. In fact, one little hack for you. Sorry, Renee, going on a little longer than you intended,
please
but
go. You
we
go
created the
brother.
coolest.
I'm just allowing myself to receive your transmission, so it's all good.
Here's the coolest thing. You know how in the movies you wanna like, they got to show you somebody getting ready for a fight or a dance, or they got to learn a skill. They want to learn how to fly. We show a montage of all their training. Well, here's my challenge for you. Create a video, a dream board video called a lockdown montage that you use to inspire yourself to be the fullest version of you. You know, and I know that the present you wants the future you to do some stuff. You're just not so sure the future you's going to do it. So the lockdown montage is a video you watch first thing in the morning, and it gets your juices going and it gets you on track. You watch it again when you go to bed at night with the volume turned down a little bit. And we've got the coolest social media contest going on about that. You go and upload your lockdown montage. You use the hashtag lockdownmontage.com. There's nothing to buy. There's no email to register. It's just a big social media campaign designed to drown out the fear, designed to drown out the conspiracy theorists and all that rubbish, with positive, inspirational videos that are going to give us all an idea of how we can use the lockdown. So you create your lockdown montage. You upload it to Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, wherever, with the hashtag lockdown montage. And we're giving away thousands of dollars worth of stuff, including this, which if you know me, you'll understand this is really valuable. If you don't know me, you'll have to take my word for it. But I'm even giving away one live one-on-one coaching session. I have not done one-on-one coaching for people for years, and I get asked for it all the time. We're also giving away some speaking training. We're giving away some Wild Fit courses. We have other partners that are not like Make Your Mark in Vancouver is giving away some courses. So go and create your lockdown montage. If you want to see how to do it, you know, if you want help how to create the video, go to lockdownmontage.com. And there's nothing to buy. You don't have to register. We don't want your email address. We just want you to have fun and create a great video.
I just got on my phone right now so that I can remember this, because I want to win the session with Eric.
Get your video.
I do. And you guys better watch out, because I will say, Eric, I am really proud that I have been in that hustling category. Really, truly, my husband and I are like, we are that next generation that is going to come out as the billion-dollar industry in years, you know, from now. And so I'm having no regret about every day. And it just feels so good to be in that place. You guys better compete with me, because I might win, and my husband's a videographer. So
oh yeah, you guys have some serious competition. But I will tell you this, in case you're worried about that, we take things like that into account.
Great, Erica. Doesn't matter. I'm still going to enter.
You should. I'm glad.
Thank you so much, Eric. I know we could just go on and on. This is amazing, because this is the longest that we've been on a call, but truly, this could just go for hours. I look forward to seeing everyone on Monday. Again, thank you so much, Eric, for your enthusiasm, for your expertise, for your passion, and for taking the extra time to just be so present with us and leaving everyone with that type of an activation, just grounding us in and reminding us all of what the true potential is of this time. And I really truly believe at the end of the day, that's why we're all on this call. we want to receive, you know, this awareness and this deeper activation. We want to be propelled into the best versions of ourselves. And I really think that you connected us to that today. So thank you again so much, friend.
You're
And
very, very welcome.
we shall hopefully see each other again soon.
Well, in all sincerity, please reach out to Kelsey if you want to do another Q&A session where everybody can actually come along. Please feel free to reach out to Kelsey.
I would
I'll let her know it's a
I already
priority.
know that I am anticipating a lot of really sad folks that couldn't be on here today. So thank you for that, Eric. I really appreciate it.
No worries. We'll make it happen.
Okay, bye everyone.